This is the clock. His name is Brian O'Brien, and Wikipedia cites him as the first fully masked hero to appear in American comics. I don't know enough to dispute that claim, so I'm going to go with it. He is a Golden Age character who, after a chain of sales, was owned by Quality Comics. When DC bought Quality, his copyright was supposedly not renewed, so he's public domain now. I am admittedly a little dubious on this since it's something Wikipedia just says and it doesn't even have a source there. But people do occasionally use him in their own things, so it is probably the case that he is in the public domain, if only by default. Anyway, is he canon in some form to the main DC continuity? Well, if you look at current stuff about canonicity, he's not mentioned at a single time in Wade's New History, so he's probably not. That means this is a case closed, right? No, it's not, because DC canon has changed over time. There are a lot of things that used to be canon and aren't anymore. He wouldn't ever have been canon before Crisis on Infinite Earths because, like I said before, he originated from Quality Comics, and that is a separate universe. But after that, is he canon? If you go to his Wikipedia page to see if there's anything on there about this, you'll see that he is mentioned in James Robinson's Starman a couple of times. The citations are specifically for issues 19 and 20, and it's not on there, but he also gets briefly mentioned in a very obscure Elseworld story called JLA Destiny. He is a background character, basically. This isn't relevant because the story isn't canon, but I just wanted to avoid the actually. Case closed. He's canon. And if you're like me, you see this and you go to the books to try and check this. Because Wikipedia, especially when it comes to obscure comic characters, is not the most reliable. So you go, open up your omnibus, you go to the issues in question, it's not there. Okay, you go to the digital versions. You look in them. It's not there either. Something's going on here. That, of course, makes me interested, so I start looking into stuff more. This is the only image I can find that has any mention of him. It's on the DC Fandom Wiki, which itself is not famously reliable. It also mentions, the wiki that is, that he's in Starman 78 and 19, but leaves out Starman 20. In case you're curious, he's also not mentioned in either version of Starman 78. So, you go and look at other sources. Comic Vine doesn't have any issue numbers, but it is the only one that mentions JLA Destiny. In case you're curious, and you go to the pages for these issues on either Comic Vine or the Fandom Wiki, he is not mentioned on any of them. If you're curious, the content of the 3 pages is also unhelpfully vague. They all just kind of talk about how he was thought to be dead and then turned out not to be dead. The years aren't agreed upon. The Fandom Wiki says that this happened in 1941, and the other two say 1944. This, plus some of the details that are included in them, makes me kind of suspect that Comic Vine is just taking from Wikipedia here. In a rarity, I'm actually inclined to trust the Fandom Wiki here, mostly because the information on there lines up the best with what evidence there is. So what I think happened here is at the end of the issues, there were these little shade journal pages that replaced some letters pages, which don't tend to be included in collections, and as a result, they weren't collected or digitized with the rest. I don't know if they're in the original collections of Starman. I suspect not, based on what I have been able to find of those collections. The only evidence I have that they might be is a single GameFAQs post and the fact that people don't complain about it, but the latter is barely evidence, so I suspect the answer is they aren't. I couldn't stand this confusion, so I bought all 3 issues in question. In order of least to most interesting, here they are. The clock is not mentioned at all in issue 20. He is mentioned in issue 19. This is where the image on the Fandom Wiki comes from, and that's pretty much all there is to his mention. He is also mentioned in issue 78. It's where he's revealed to be alive, and it states that he is Brian O'Brien. So yeah, this all kind of means that the clock at some point was in fact canon. It wasn't really much of anything beyond a few mentions, but at some point Brian O'Brien existed in the DC universe. I think that's cool because I think the clock is cool. I read a couple of his stories via the Digital Comic Museum. They were Golden Age stories. I'm not a huge fan of those, to be honest. So someone who is might get a little more mileage out of them. I think he's a character you could do a lot with. And also because I learned this while reading those comics and I want to talk about this and I couldn't find a way how to. Uh, this is Madame Fatal. He's a middle-aged single father who dresses up as an elderly woman to fight crime. And he's doing this because his daughter was abducted. I love this concept, and unlike the clock, who's just been mentioned, this is a character that actually physically appeared in comics published by DC as recently as 2011. Here he is in Shade 4, which is, funnily enough, also written by James Robinson.